Welcome to the Curator of the Culture, your weekly portal into the vibrant intersections of style, innovation, and culture. I'm Garrett, the curator and guide through this journey. From the latest sneakers to groundbreaking tech and car designs, we're here to explore it all. But before we dive in, let me share a bit about myself. I've been immersed in the world of design since the age of 6, sketching shoes and cars with a passion that only grew stronger over the years. I honed my skills through countless hours of design, eventually creating over 5,000 edited sneaker mock-ups, a journey that led me to an interview with Nike in 2017. Though they didn't offer me a spot on their team, I refused to be deterred. In 2020, I unveiled the Fear God 6, a bold fusion of the Air Jordan 6 Infrared and the Nike Fear God 1s. The design went viral online, eventually being made for Trinidad James by legendary shoemaker The Shoe Surgeon. But I didn't stop there. I continued to push boundaries, unleashing the world's first Bluetooth LED Nike Air Force 1s, a testament to my relentless pursuit of innovation and creativity. Join me each week as we uncover the stories, trends, and personalities shaping the landscape. This is the Curator of Culture. Hey, what's going on, YouTube? This is Garrett, but you can call me G. I wanted to start with this first episode with being the state of cultural affairs. Or not so much the state of cultural affairs, but the state of the culture. And I've noticed there's been a huge shift in what's been going on and no one's really been speaking about it. So I wanted to pretty much touch base on it today. And throughout this journey, we'll be talking about different things in all different kinds of spaces. So let's get started. Without further ado, welcome to the Curator of the Culture with Garrett Peoples. So our first topic, we actually going to talk about, I've wanted to really dive into is music. And the first things, or at least the first thing right now that's really big is the beef between K-Dot and obviously Kendrick. So yeah, the beef has been pretty much the biggest thing in music right now. So I wanted to pretty much dive in, give my insights onto it, and pretty much think, what I think about it. I think starting off, it is really big for the industry and the culture as a whole to give someone to talk about. We haven't really had, I don't know, there's been music beefs and music talk, but I don't think there's been anything like this on this level for quite some time. Definitely to like this magnitude, probably. Really, like I feel like this magnitude was probably Jay-Z and Nas. I don't think, you know what I mean? I don't think there's been anything as anticipated since then. 50 and Kanye, I think, in the early 2000s or the mid 2000s, that was one that I really remember because that was definitely like my era of music growing up. But outside of that, I don't think there's been anything this large. So I definitely think that it's something that's good for hip hop and the culture. With that said, though, I did see something. Actually, I've seen something several times coming from Vince Staples, where he basically is, giving his opinion on it, and he's, I definitely understand where he's coming from, and I respect it. And he's saying that there's much more important stuff at hand than dealing with this beef. And then when you start to look at the beef and you realize what it's really about, it's not really about anything. So I definitely get that. And, I guess in a perfect world, yeah, we wouldn't have these two guys going at each other. But, for what it is, you have to sit back and enjoy it or not participate. You know what I mean? So as music lovers, what are you going to do? Not listen because you don't really subscribe to what their issues are, or whatever the case may be. So it has to make sense. And I guess everyone has their opinion. I do think that there's pros and cons to both sides. I do think that it's starting to get extremely messy. And I think that might be why Cole bowed out early. You know what I mean? He knew where it was going, and he's just like, I don't bring my kid's mom, don't bring my kids into it or nothing like that. So he's just like, you know what? I'm gonna sign off before this starts to where it's going. I mean, I'm pretty sure he had a conversation with both of, Drake and K Dot, and he, I'm pretty sure he was just like, all right, I gotta bow out before this gets crazy, and so, yeah, that's pretty much where that is. But when we start to speak about the tracks, I think it's very interesting because we waited so long to get a response from K Dot. It was like 3-4 weeks type thing. But I think that we're going to get the highest level of beef rap we're ever going to see, if that makes any sense. So these two are pretty much at the top of the chain when it comes to hip hop artists currently. And so they aren't going to put out anything that's subpar or mediocre, you know what I mean, or mediocre in terms of the quality. So at what point, what is your comparison if both of them are never going to put out mediocre work? How do you start to score? How do you score that if, you know what I mean? How do you score? And so I think that at a point, this beef is just going to turn into a draw. They're already pretty much getting into salacious stuff, both K-Dot and Drake. And, it's getting messy. I'm sure it's going to get messier. But, it's all, it's pretty much all in how you look at it. I think it's getting messy as grown men, you know what I mean? Especially because I'm pretty close to age to those guys. And we're all, we're 35 plus. So at a point, why are we even doing this? You know what I mean? Like, especially for them guys who are wildly successful. I don't know if it's like the sparring of words, you know what I mean? Let's see who's actually the best. If that's even possible, or I don't know what it could be, but I think that it's gonna end in a stalemate, just a draw ultimately. And so that first track Kendrick put out, I thought was all right. Like it was a very artistic approach to a beef track, a diss track, should I say. Very artistic. And it's, the thing about K-Dot, especially for me, is he's never going to give you that flow or cadence that you want. It's always going to be whatever he feels like he wants to deliver. And so, in the track, it's just, I would prefer more direct hitting bars and lines. Or no, I don't want to say lines, but just less of the K-Dot nuances. Just, you know what I mean? Just speak and have your words clear so we can, you know what I mean? Just like the tones and sounds and voices, I'm not a huge fan of personally. So that's why I'm biased to it. And then Drake came right back, you know what I mean, with a response. And I have to say, before going any further, that I'm a huge Drake stan, and I'm a K-Dot fan as well, like huge fans of these guys. But I think that Drake is obviously on another level. When you just look at the accomplishments and the accolades, it speaks for itself, you know what I mean? But I do think that Kendrick is also in a league of his own, you know what I mean? Like being the only rapper that I know of that's won the Pulitzer Prize. And I was just thinking about it the other day, like how would one, even win something like that. You know what I mean? Like there has to be a huge element of art in that. And it started to lead me into, because I actually watched kind of like it was a documentary, or I don't want to say a documentary, but a story on how the Kendrick and the K-Dot beef all started or whatever. But it just led me to realizing that Kendrick was really heavy into poetry, even from like grade school or at least high school. You know, he was always into poetry. And so if he goes into projects with a poetic mind, you know what I mean? Like that's a different level of art. And then, you know what I mean? So maybe that's why he was recognized for that. You know what I mean? And on top of his music, just, you know, it's definitely different. It doesn't sound like anything else. So, you know, that's what led me to that. And I don't really want to go too far on that tangent, but you know, they are two different types of artists. And so yeah, we keep going into this beef, and we got another track from Drake, and I love it. I absolutely love it, man. He goes into three different beats, three different like flows, and again, like I'm biased, but when it's good, what can you say? You know what I mean? Like if it's good, what can you say? You know, there's no denying that is great, and he's talking his shit in the highest level, and you know what I mean? Like it's just what can you say? So you know what I mean? Like I think personally, I think Drake is up just based off of the content of the music. But I don't think K-Dot is far based off the quality of what he has offered so far. So again, I'm pretty much neck and neck. And if you picking a side, you know what I mean? If you have to pick a side, I think you know there's a divide. And yeah, you know, I mean, you know, I guess I'm trying to say, if you pick a side, I don't know, you're obviously biased to one or the other, because, you know, it's like I think they're very comparable in terms of everything that they do. Somehow, and it's funny because Drake puts out way more music, and yet K-Dot is still able to have this parallel with him, even though he doesn't put out nearly the same amount of music. But in that same regard, can someone be as good if they aren't producing the same amount of work as you, even though the quality is technically the same or on par? That's, you know what I mean? That's the question that you really gotta ask yourself. We got other figures that's kind of including itself in the beef too. We got Rick Ross, we got Ye, and I think that these figures, like these guys, should just set this out. You know, like I feel like it's just people trying to reach for attention, or you know, trying to pull from that attention that these guys are getting, trying to pull it, you know, pull some of it to themselves. And I guess, you know, I don't know, trying to, you know, staying relevant, I guess I understand it, but it just looks extremely corny to me. You know, where you got multiple guys attacking one person. You know what I mean? Like whether or not he's an enemy of yours or not, like if somebody's already attacking him, why, you know what I mean? Do you feel like you need to do it too? I'm not sure. Like that's just that's a bandwagon looking thing to me. Um, but I don't know. Like, Ye did the Like That remix, and I'm not even sure if I heard it because I didn't really want to hear. I heard maybe some of it, but it was just like I think I heard some. It's like, yeah, I don't really need to. You know what I mean? Like you could tell he just jumped on the track just to be a part of it. Like you just want to be included. And that's what it felt like with the Ross thing. It's just like, he been doing some real skeptical things too. And I mean, I believe he and Drake still have a relationship. So they're I feel like their beef isn't really real. You know what I mean? Because they've been seen hugging since this. At least that's what's been portrayed. Like, who knows when that video actually was shown? But you know what I mean? If they still cool, then obviously they just doing it for the look and for the cameras, and I don't have a problem with that. But if you're serious about it, you know what I mean, and really have issues, like to jump on a bandwagon is not is lame. And I hate to say it because Ye is one of them guys. He's especially for me. You know what I mean? Like he pretty much helped mold me into a lot of who I am today. And so for me to be saying that about him, it's no bias. Just facts and just my point of view. And so we'll pretty much move on from that. I know a lot of people obviously are talking about it, so it's not like there's a shortage of content based on this beef going on. So I just wanted to give my my 2 cents and just my quick opinion on it. Next thing I seen in music, and again we're gonna cover a bunch of different things, but I wanted to kind of stay on topic, and then we'll go to these different cultural significance. And so the next thing I seen was the Sexy Red twerking at a country concert. I'm not sure the country artist name because I'm not a country artist fan at all. But yeah, I'm not even sure what to say or how to comprehend it other than as a black man in this society, I feel it's incredibly damning or damaging to us as a culture and society to have stuff like this. Like I see the breaking of boundaries and barriers I see happening, but if this is the barriers that are being broken is for us to be put on stages just to be made mockeries of, or you know what I mean? Like, granted, she's probably being paid for it, but ultimately as a whole and as a society, it is making us look less than ideal. Yeah, it does not look good for us. It's a bad representation of us. And I think I'll just leave it at that. I think it's all by design, to have us look in a certain way. And unfortunately, it sucks, but I think that's the harsh reality. Next up, Four Bats. I listened to his project he just released on Apple Music. I think it dropped this past Friday. I listened to it a few times. It's very short. It's like 29 minutes with like 12 tracks, but I think, some of the tracks are like interludes and you know what I mean? So it's maybe, probably 8 or 9 actual tracks. And granted, he put out an EP before, so a lot of those tracks are on that EP from before. So there's maybe 3-4 new songs, I think. But it's a pretty solid project. He's a very interesting person. Like I'm still confused as to his voice. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't sound necessarily natural, especially coming from from what he looked. I mean, you would imagine he has a pretty dark. I'm sorry, not dark, but deep voice. Um, and so I'm not sure how that's all coming about. I'm not sure if that's the next wave of like artificial sounding voices. You know, if it's like AI sounding type thing or whatever. But it was good. It was all right. I really appreciated it. You know, and of course he just signed with Drake. So I think that's interesting, and obviously that's probably how we got that Apple deal. Um, but there's something to all of this, and this is a big part of the like cultural shift I was talking about. Is like, how does this guy immediately have an Apple deal without even like it just, you know what I mean? Like people are just leapfrogging things that so many other people have worked so hard and long for. You know what I mean? It's very discouraging to those people who have put in the time and effort to see others just leapfrog them. And I'm definitely speaking from experience here. But yeah, you know what I mean? So I'm not sure how to take that all. And especially if I was like an actual musician or artist, you know, how do you swallow that? But then in the same breath, it's just like, man, do you not maybe look at it as motivation? Just like, hey, you know, anything is possible. Like maybe I could be the next one to pop and get an Apple Music deal. So I do think it's obviously in your determination and in your mindset, but there is a lot of other stuff too that you can't speak on, you know what I mean, or you can't factor in your own endeavors. And so yeah, that's something I think that we need to keep an eye on as a whole, is if there's going to be more like four bats, or if he is the next shift in music, just that style. You know what I mean? Like there hasn't been a real style change in some time. You know, like it was Drake in the mid 2010s, and then pretty much like Atlanta after that. And then, you know, you got like the Slim Thugs, and then, you know, Gunna was probably the last major star from there to have like a real wave, you know what I mean? Like actual wave and sound. So yeah, I mean, this could be this could be the possibility of a new sound or a new wave starting out. Maybe you know, Champagne sees that. So I guess we got to stay locked in. Next up, we're gonna move on to shoes, which is obviously something that I'm well versed in and probably know most about and have the most experience in. And so I just wanted to talk about the current state of footwear and where we are. You know, pretty much I can peg everything back to the 2011 Concord release. When that shoe dropped, that's when sneakers took off to a new height. And granted, before that, you know what I mean? Like basketball sneakers were really big, like the LeBrons, the KDs. All of those were really big back then. And so I'll never forget the 2011 Concords. They really pushed that wave of just like retros going crazy. I remember the year before 2010, the Cool Grays dropped, and I remember being able to go to the store and cop in multiple pairs. But it wasn't like that when the Concords dropped. And I must say, I've never been a Concord fan. Like they're my least favorite of the OGs. I know, real shocker. I'm just like, they were always just plain, just a white and black shoe. You know, sorry, but it's just what it is. Like of all the other colors, you know what I mean? They were just the least hot to me. But so yeah. And so that's what really kicked off the shoes. And so not, these brands ran rampant for years, pumping shoes, pumping shoes. You know what I mean? It was a free for all. And if you look at just the dividends and what these companies were making year after year, you know what I mean? Profits in the billions and billions. And you know what I mean? I think it got to a point where they got too comfortable and where they were. There's not been too much innovation, especially like on the casual or basketball side. I don't want to say basketball side because they're stepping up their basketball program now than they have been for the last few years. But the problem is that now no one is wearing basketball shoes casually outside of kids because retro shoes have been a mainstay for the last decade. So if people have only been wearing, or primarily wearing retro shoes, no one's interested in the new stuff because it's purpose built. You know what I mean? It's like buying a rock crawler Jeep. You know what I mean, for the streets. It doesn't make too much sense. And granted, people do it, but it's a lot less of it happening now, especially in footwear. And so, I think these companies are at a point where they are being ran by people who have been in the same positions for decades. And to be honest, they're just out of touch. You know what I mean? Like, there's no nice or easy way of putting it. There's a shift. And, companies aren't recognizing it, people aren't recognizing it, and I think there's only a matter of time until things have to change. And I seen never, and this is a really big point that I wanted to make, like Nike previewing future footwear concepts. They did one for like Wimby and Shikari, and they're like really futuristic models, but when has Nike ever done this before? When have they ever had to show tech, 5 years out in advance? Like these shoes should be here now, if not next year. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I don't think they have anything, and they haven't had anything, and it shows because, you know what I mean? If they had something, this stuff would be going to market now. Or relatively soon versus 4 or 5 years, which is just crazy to me. You know what I mean? Like, who's gonna care in 4 or 5 years? And we can't say that like the futuristic stuff didn't work because I think Kanye proved it with Adidas. Like, granted, they were simple, super simple, constructed shoes, but they were futuristic. They looked like nothing else ever before. They were wildly comfortable. You know what I mean? So you can't say that it's people don't want to wear futuristic footwear. You just have to figure out, how to bridge it and how to make it make sense. And obviously Nike has never been able to do that with new product, at least in the last decade. Like, one of their last really big casual hits was like the Roshi, and maybe before that or during the same period was the Janowskis, the SB Janowskis, and those were both wildly successful casual-esque shoes. And I mean, granted, the Janowski was a skateboarding shoe, so that was purposeful, but it still had a super casual look to it. You know what I mean? And so I think that's something that obviously, isn't being spoke on, and that, people need to really keep an eye on that. I don't think these companies are making, you know what I mean? It's just, nothing makes sense. That's why nothing's being sold the way it was. Companies are pulling that just strings in the air, trying to find something to stick. And it's just proven more and more that nothing is working because they're so out of touch with everyone, with their consumer. So yeah, I wanted to say that. Next, I wanted to talk about this Nigel Sylvester hybrid. They started calling it a Jordan 4 low. It's obviously not a Jordan 4 low. The tooling is from a Jordan 4, and it's like a 3/4 cut type of cut silhouette. So it is a lower cut silhouette, but it's not a Jordan 4. But with that said, I have mixed feelings about it. You immediately see that the construction is premium. And so I think that Jordan Brand thinks that if you build a shoe with premium construction, that's like half the battle, and that's what's going to make people want it. And no, it has to look good as well. And to me, the shoe just doesn't look great. Maybe it could be purposeful for BMX, but I think social media isn't doing it any help by calling it a Jordan 4, because it's not. It's solely a hybrid, and it's not the best hybrid either. But you know what I mean? It is what it is. And, that shoe is going to come out. You might do some numbers with that first release pair. And that's usually, what their plan is to put out a super, limited release and then bring in the inline stuff afterwards. So that means all of the colors that make it to the stores, that's what comes next. And I don't think the Nigel stamp of approval is going to do anything for this shoe because it's not a good looking shoe. And I'm sure the market will reflect that. So we will see. Let's keep an eye on it. Next, I did see over the last couple of weeks, there's this Nike Inspa. It's like a jacket, but it doubles as a tent. And this is the kind of stuff. At first, I thought it was just a concept, but it's apparently it's a real product from Nike. And I think it's awesome, obviously, that you can have a jacket that doubles as a tent. However, it does retail for like $600. So that leads me to question who is the target audience for? Because, while it's a very cool thing, who is going, who, I don't understand. Who's going to spend that kind of money on a jacket that doubles as a tent outside of, I guess, a person that hikes and camps in extreme situations. And then I guess if it's for them, it's an awesome product. But if it's just something to just be like, we're doing some cool, innovative shit, but it's going to cost you $600, then I think it's going to be an extreme miss. Guess we'll see. But yeah, I do like the idea, and I do like somewhat of the idea of the Nike Inspa program. They're doing just kind of some out there kind of stuff. That's cool. I guess we'll see, see where it goes. Next up, I just wanted to touch on this Jack Harlow collab. It leaked, or I don't want to say leaked, but it was, I seen it either last night or today, actually, earlier. And it was immediately surprising to see the shoe, because it doesn't scream Jack Harlow to me at all. And with that said, I don't understand the connection of how he got to where he got. I'm sure maybe moving forward, closer to release, they might put a whole package together explaining how he arrived at this design. But as a whole, to me, I don't like it at all. And I barely like the silhouette at all. But this shoe and the color combination, and it looks very female-esque. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but if it is indeed a male or a bi, or I don't, what the hell do you call the men and women shoes? I can't think of the name, but if they're for men and women, then I feel like you are being amazingly biased and leaving out men, I guess. You know what I mean? Just from the shoestrings or shoelaces, you know what I mean, to a lot of the pink on it. Just, you know, it just screams kind of a women's colorway to me. So yeah. I did want to touch on pretty much sports. And while I'm not the biggest sports guy, I do enjoy sports and I do try to keep up on them. It's very hard to like not talk about Anthony Edwards right now and how great he's playing. You know, he's playing just great, and he's only 22 years old. And me being much older than 22, like, puts it into perspective for me how young he is and the guys he's playing against. You know what I mean? Like, yo, he's a very young person playing at the highest level against people who have been professionals in their career for some over a decade. If you put that into perspective, it's very, it's incredible, and you know, it's eye opening. You know what I mean? Like, his performance has just been nothing but great, and you know, there's been a lot of comparisons with him. You know, comparing him to MJ at 22, and I think it's just like, man, that's a lot to live with. But if he keeps playing the way that he's playing, I think this could be very exciting for the league. And, you know, you do have Wembanyama playing phenomenal as well. And, you know, so you got these two guys. And I was watching the Gilbert Arenas podcast, and they pretty much was discussing who did they think would be the face of the league in 5 years. And they mentioned they didn't ever think that there had been a European player who had ever been the face of the league. And, you know, of course, Wembanyama being one of, you know, the face, if that would be, you know, the case. And if Anthony Edwards keeps playing the way that he's playing, then there's a good chance, you know what I mean, that I feel like, you know, the NBA would want to keep the face of the NBA an American star versus, you know, a Euro star, just for perception, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, I think that's that's another shift in the culture. We have like LeBron out, we have Steph out. You know what I mean? Like, these are the guys that always made it, and now they're out, and now we have a 22-year-old person packing these guys up. And so it's very hard to say there's not a shift. And granted, you know what I mean, there's always like next season kind of thing, but time isn't, you know, kind to anyone. And, you know, it's kind of like a reverse thing now. You know, you're counting against the time versus, you know, having unlimited time, especially for those older guys. And so, you know, the longer they go, the harder of a, you know, time they're gonna have playing against these younger guys. So yeah, you know, that was my point with that shift. And next up was like F1 and that cultural shift. I don't want to say cultural because it's not. I don't want to say culture, but there is definitely a shift in that as well. You know, like Lewis Hamilton was dominant for years, 6-7 straight like seasons, and now he isn't even like polling anymore. And granted, like, I'm not the biggest I don't want to say I'm not, like, I've just got into F1, and it was realistically just from the Netflix series. like just watching that, like it really gave you a great look at it, and really started to have me appreciate the sport more. And so I've been trying to watch, whenever I can. Obviously, they're all over the world, so sometimes they're at weird times. They might be at 3 in the morning my time, which I'm obviously not gonna watch. But like I was actually I put off recording today just so I could watch the Miami Grand Prix, and it was a good race, and finally, like, Verstappen didn't win. He's been winning every race, like, everywhere, and so there's definitely a shift. I wanted to mention though that I'm not sure how true it is, but I seen that Mercedes offered Max Verstappen 150 million a year to race with Mercedes. And if that is true, that is insane. Like, I don't know how many years, maybe 2-3 years kind of thing, but that is so much money, obviously, but it's just it's just an obscene amount of money. And the way that he's winning, obviously, it's not like you're taking a gamble on him being good or not. He's obviously the best right now, so I'm sure he can command that. But just to hear 150 million a year is just absolutely incredible. But when you have to think though, it's just like, man, if he's making 150 million a year, I wonder what Mercedes is going to be making in revenue. You know what I mean? Like, to have someone like Max Verstappen on racing, you know what I mean? I'm sure it has to boost everything by billions. You know what I mean? So paying him that is probably just a drop in the bucket type thing. But yeah, I've been really enjoying F1, and I hope at some point I'll be able to watch an actual game, not a game, but a race. Like, I really want to see an F1 race. Like, I fancy, like, I always envision myself being an F1 driver. I know I couldn't handle it. Like, I know I couldn't, but in my mind, I think that I can. So I have a close love with racing and just cars in general. Next up, I wanted to talk about was just briefly finance and where that is and the shift that is happening with that. If you are in your 30s and up, I'm assuming you've probably maybe looked at buying a house. And if you're looking currently, like, the market is insane. And like, hearing that APRs are at the highest that they've ever been, like, insane APRs, like 17% type stuff, or not, like, just incredibly high. No, that may be for a car. I don't know if 17 for a house that might be like illegal, because that would just, you know what I mean? But I know they were up to like 8%, 7 to 8%. And even that, I know that small percentage from like 3 to 4 going up to 7 and 8 is like a huge jump in what you pay overall. And so basically, it's going to be amazingly hard moving forward to get mortgages. And it leads me to think about, like, my kids. Like, I have young kids. My oldest son is only 12. So, you know what I mean? Like, for kids, for my kids, what is it going to look like for them? They're already saying that families are going to have to start buying houses together just to afford to live together. You know what I mean? To live. And so, there's a good chance that by the time my kids are, looking for houses, APRs might be at, something that you can't even comprehend. And granted, markets do fluctuate and they go up and down. And hopefully at some point the market doesn't, and it says that it should, but currently, you know what I mean? Like, if you wanted to do anything within the next year or two, it's an absolute horrible time to do it. And I say that to say that this is another cultural shift. No longer can you buy a house and and settle down and be good. Like, you got to really plan this out. And the further we wait, the more and more it looks like you might have to get help from your kids, or what I mean, you might have to live with your parents, or get a co-op, or you just got to really figure out how to maneuver moving forward just with this market. And the other thing I did want to say too is I don't want to say this, that there is a shift, at least in what I'm seeing in gas prices. Gas prices are climbing, and I've learned that there is no shortage of fuel or raw crude oil and all of that stuff, just based in America alone. And so basically these oil companies are allowed to price gouge however they want. And you know what I mean? They just it's a free open floodgate to just pull money from us. You know what I mean? Like, it's a literal open door for them for just getting money. They raise the prices whenever they want, or maybe they blame it on some conflict somewhere else. But you know what I mean? Like, none of that should be reflected on us. And so, there's this weird thing of, EV cars being a problem, but then gas prices are going up too. You know what I mean? And so they're saying that the EVs are harming the planet, but then the gas is too. Where is the happy medium? If it were up to me, I would probably drive electric cars, because I hate paying for gas. I hate gassing up. And granted, an electric car, you'd be powering up, or I don't know if you can't call it powering, but I mean, you'd be charging. You'd be charging up. Granted, a lot longer than a typical a gas charger. You know what I mean? But my always thought was like, hey, if you can charge at home, try do that. And that would definitely, you know what I mean? If I were to get an electric car, I would definitely want to charge at home to save on all of it. You know what I mean? The stopping somewhere else to have to charge, paying the charging fees for whatever that may be. I've seen conflicting thing about the charging too, like the prices. I've seen it be almost equivalent to a damn gas fill up. You paying $35, $40 to charge it. Like, that's crazy. You know what I mean? Then I've seen where, you're only paying a few cents per kilowatt or something. You know what I mean? So I'm not sure. And granted, I haven't had a whole lot of experience with EVs and definitely not charging to give my 2 cents on that. But there is a shift. And, I'm noticing that a lot of car companies were pushing EVs, and then they started to realize, like, hey, there's a lot of problems with EVs, like especially in cold weather climates. The batteries suffer tremendously, and outside of like the Tesla supercharging network, none of the other manufacturers had a really robust charging network, which is a huge factor. And so they're now starting to realize that hybrids, so a gas engine with an electric motor, is the way to go. And considering that there aren't too many electric cars that can get over 300 miles on a charge, which I feel like 300 would be the absolute minimum for it to be acceptable. Like, any gas car, if you fill it up with gas, I'm thoroughly sure you should be able to get 400 miles on almost anything that probably isn't a V8 or something. You know what I mean? But I'm sure maybe even a V8 these days probably can travel 400 miles. And so You know what I mean? Like most EVs only do 300 or less. That's a huge factor. Um, and so I feel until these EVs are able to do comparable of a gas car, so 400, if not better, you know what I mean? It's just like you would think that EVs, not that you would think, but you'd hope that at some point EVs can go further than, you know what I mean, a gas car. But we're still in the infancy of EVs, really. Like EVs have been on the market for a little over a decade. You know what I mean? We've been making combustion engines for 100 years. So if you do that, you look at it like a 10% thing versus being at 100%. We're just starting. But I do see that car companies are backtracking and not pushing EVs as much, and now going into hybrids, which I feel makes a lot of sense. It kind of gives you the best of both, where you get the EV part, where you get the range of however, many miles, but then you also get the extension of the gas. The only thing that I find interesting is that a lot, or should I don't want a lot, the car companies, or at least what's going to be happening is the performance car companies are going to be doing hybrids with the normal engine. But I'm wondering if the companies that were just strictly doing EVs are going to do hybrids with smaller engines with like bigger batteries and try to like compensate, or you know what I mean? How are they going to try to maximize? Because it's really all about range. Ultimately, you know what I mean? Like the battery, or I'm sorry, the electric motors give you the speed and the torque, but you know what I mean? You're going to suffer with the battery range. And so that's the thing with the marrying the two, is like, what are these companies going to do moving forward? And I think all these companies were like 100% all in on EVs, and then realized that EVs aren't there. And so now they have to backtrack and kind of start from the infancy of hybrids all over again. And so I think that a lot of companies are going to move towards hybrids, and then eventually move into full EVs when the tech is better suited moving forward. And so, man, I've said a lot. I'm really proud that I got through this all. There was a lot of hiccups. And granted, this is the first show. So bear with me, but you know what I mean? I want to make sure that I continue to do this, and that we talk about this stuff that's happening, and that I give my insights on it. And I just want to thank you guys for watching. If you do want to support me, support the channel, of course, I need you to like, subscribe, share, comment, and let's really get this going so we can make this something. We don't have anything that speaks to the culture overall. We have places and programs, mediums that speak about mostly specific things, but nothing that encompasses all. You know what I mean? And so I want this to be a place where we can speak about a bunch of different things, you know what I mean, that we love, care about, and that we should know about. And so, let's just do this. You know what I mean? Your support is going to be what pushes me to keep going with these. And, I had a lot of fun actually doing this now. And it was a lot easier than I thought it would be in terms of being able to speak, because I haven't always been able to so freely or carelessly. And so granted, I do sometimes ramble, and then I can go off on tangents and get sidetracked, but I just wanted to say that, and to say thanks again. Please stay tuned. This is the Curator of Culture. I'm Garrett. Thank you.